Book of Heaven, Volume 5. The 7th of April to the 20th of May 1903. Page 5 to 10. April 7, 1903. Doubts of Luisa about her state of victim. After going through most bitter days because of the continuous privations of my adorable Jesus, this morning I felt I had reached the summit of affliction, and, tired and exhausted in my strengths, I was thinking that he really did not want me in this state any more, and I almost decided to go out of it. While I was doing this, my lovable Jesus moved in my interior and made himself heard praying for me. I could only understand that he was imploring the power, the strength and the providence of the Father for me, adding, "Don't you see, O Father, how she has greater need for help, as she wants to render herself a sinner by going out of our will, after so many graces?" Who can say how I felt my heart split on hearing these words of Jesus? Then he came out from within my interior, and after I made sure that it was blessed Jesus, I said, "Lord, is it your will that I continue to remain in this state of victim? Because, not feeling myself in the same position as before, I see myself as if the coming of the priest was no longer necessary, for if nothing else, I would spare the confessor the sacrifice. And he, for now, it is not my will that you go out of it. As for the sacrifice of the priest, I will render back to him the charity he does, increased 100-fold. Then, all afflicted, he added, "My daughter, the socialists have plotted among themselves to strike the church. This they have done publicly in France, and in Italy in a more hidden way. And my justice is looking for voids so as to lay hand to chastisements." April 10, 1903. Since men do not surrender, Jesus will play the trumpet of new and grave scourges. As I was in my usual state, I saw our Lord with a rod in his hand with which he touched the people. As they were touched, they scattered and rebelled, and the Lord said to them, "I have touched you to reunite you around me, but instead of reuniting, you rebel and scatter away from me, therefore it is necessary that I blow the trumpet." And while saying this, he began to blow the trumpet. I understood that the Lord will send some chastisement, and men, instead of humbling themselves, will take the occasion to offend him and to move away from him, and on seeing this, the Lord will make the trumpet of more grave scourges resound. April 21, 1903. Jesus suspends Luisa from her usual state so as to be able to chastise. I went through most bitter days of privations and of tears, with the addition of seeing myself about to be suspended by the Lord from the state of victim, as indeed happened. In fact, as much as I tried, I could not manage to lose consciousness, but rather, I was surprised by so many pains in my bowels as to become restless, unable to make head or tail of anything. I only had a dream at night, in which I seemed to see an angel who brought me inside a garden in which all plants were blackened. But I did not pay attention to this, I could only think of how Jesus had driven me away from himself. Then, later on, the confessor came, and finding me inside myself he told me that the vineyards had frozen. I remained so very afflicted, thinking of the poor people, and with the fear that he would not allow me to fall into my usual state so as to be able to chastise freely. However, this morning blessed Jesus came, making me fall into my usual state, and as soon as I saw him, I said to him, "Ah, Lord, what about yesterday? What did you do? You made your bravado, and besides, without even telling me anything, for at least I would have prayed you to hold back the chastisement in part." And he, "My daughter, it was necessary for me to suspend you, otherwise you would have prevented me, and I would not have been free. Besides, how many times have I not done what you wanted? Ah, my daughter, it is necessary that scourges pour upon the world, otherwise, in order to spare the bodies, souls will be lost." Having said this, he disappeared, and I found myself outside of myself without my sweet Jesus. So I went around looking for him, and in the meantime I saw a sun in the vault of the heavens, which was different from the sun we see, and, behind it, a multitude of saints who, in seeing the state of the world, its corruption, and how they make fun of God, all in one voice, cried out, "Revenge of your honor, of your glory. Make use of justice, for man no longer wants to recognize the rights of his Creator." But they were speaking in Latin, only, I could comprehend that this was the meaning. On hearing this, I trembled, I felt my blood run cold, and I implored pity and mercy. May 8, 1903. When man disposes himself to good, he receives good, and if he disposes himself to evil, he receives evil. I continue in my most bitter state of privation. At the most, he makes himself seen taciturn and for short instants. This morning, since the confessor committed himself to making him come, as I lost consciousness he made himself seen for a little, and almost by force. And turning to the confessor, with a serious and afflicted aspect, he said to him, "What do you want?" Father seemed to be confused and was unable to say anything, so I said, "Lord, maybe it is that thing about Mass that he wants." And the Lord said to him, "Dispose yourself and you will have it. Besides, you have the victim. The closer you remain to her with your thought and with your intention, the stronger and freer you will feel to be able to do what you want." Then I said, "Lord, how is it that you are not coming?" And he added, "Do you want to hear something? Hear it." And at that moment many cries of voices from all over the world could be heard saying, "Death to the Pope! Destruction of religion! Churches torn down! Destruction of every dominion! No one must exist above us!" And many other satanic voices, which it seems useless to me to repeat. Then our Lord added, "My daughter, when man disposes himself to good, he receives good, and if he disposes himself to evil, he receives evil." All these voices you hear reach my throne, and not once, but repeated times, and when my justice sees that man not only wants evil, but he asks for it with repeated petitions, with justice is it forced to concede it, to make them know the evil they wanted. In fact, one can truly know evil only when he finds himself in it. This is the reason why my justice keeps looking for voids in order to punish man. However, the time of your suspension has not yet come. At the most, a few days for now, so that justice may press its hand down on man a little bit, for it can no longer bear the weight of such enormities, and at the same time, so as to make man's forehead, raised too high, lower down. May 11, 1903. Peace puts passions in their place. The upright intention sanctifies everything. As I was in my usual state, I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little, who said to me, "Peace puts all passions in their place, but what triumphs over everything, establishes all the good in the soul and sanctifies everything, is to do everything for God, that is, to operate with the upright intention of pleasing God alone." An upright operating is what directs, dominates and rectifies the virtues themselves, and even obedience. In sum, it is like a conductor who directs the spiritual music of the soul. Having said this, he disappeared like a flash. May 20, 1903. Luisa offers her life for the Church and for the triumph of the truth. As I was in my usual state, I found myself outside of myself with blessed Jesus in my arms, in the midst of many people who, with irons, swords and knives, were trying, some to beat, some to wound, some to cut off the members of our Lord. But as much as they did and tried, they could cause no harm. On the contrary, their very irons, as sharp and cutting as they were, lost all their activity, and became inoperative. Jesus and I were highly afflicted at seeing the brutality of those inhuman hearts which, though they saw that they could do nothing, would yet repeat the blows in order to succeed in their intent, and if they caused no harm, it was because they were unable to. They became angry because their weapons had become useless and they were unable to carry out their resolute will to do harm to our Lord. And they said to themselves, "Why are we unable to do anything? What is the cause? It seems that other times we were able to do something, but as we find ourselves in the arms of this one here, we can do nothing. Let us try and see whether we can do harm to her, and get her out of the way." While they were saying this, Jesus withdrew to my side and gave them freedom to do what they wanted. But before they laid hands on me, I said, "Lord, I offer my life for the Church and for the triumph of the truth. Accept, I pray you, my sacrifice." Then they took a sword and cut my head off. Blessed Jesus accepted my sacrifice, but while they were doing this, in the act of making the sacrifice, to my highest sorrow I found myself inside myself. I thought I had reached the place of my desires, but I remained disappointed.